Hey guys, how's it going? So today I wanted to go over how to use find and find next to loop through values and um, basically make sure that you're adding the things that you want to a specific list. I mean, it could be used in a variety of different ways, but I'm just going to show you one specific um, way to use it. So first of all, you're going to want to open up your Visual Basic editor. Um, Obviously, to do that, you're going to go to the developer tab. If you don't have that developer tab, you'll need to go into your settings and enable it. But here we are in our Visual Basic editor. What we'll do first of all, just go ahead and insert a module. We'll open that up so that it can be seen a little better there. And then we'll just go ahead and call this sub find. Why not? And then what we'll want to do to begin with is give ourselves a couple of different variables. So in this scenario, we're hypothetically talking about some purchase order numbers and then line numbers within those purchase order numbers. So we'll just make PO as an integer, and we'll say line number as integer. And then we're going to want a check range. So we'll go ahead and do that as a range. We're also going to want, we'll just call it PO find as range as well. And then just so that we can see everything here, we'll go ahead and put that on the next line. Just make sure that we're not making stuff take up too much room there. And then what we're going to want to do, let's go ahead and just call this really quick my worksheet. And we'll go ahead and set that worksheet just so that it's easier to work with. And that just makes it so that we can, gotta have an equal sign there or it won't work. Okay, so then what we're gonna go ahead and do is, geez, there's a lot of variables that we're gonna need here. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and set that I row to 2, because that's the row that we're going to start working on. And we'll just say while I row is less than or equal to, and you see here we have 10 rows over here, so we'll just say 10. Obviously, in your situation, you might want to set a variable for how many rows there are there, because it could change depending on your situation. Here we're just doing a very simplistic demonstration, so we'll just say while I row is less than or equal to 10. We'll make sure that that's going to loop, and we'll indent that just so that's easier to read later. We'll say, let's see, what did we name that? PO equals worksheet dot cells, and the row is going to be I row, and the column is going to be 1 dot value. And so now what we've done is we've set our PO number up here to this 100 right here. So we have that PO number as our variable. And then we're going to set the line number to the same thing here, except that we're in column 2 dot value. So now that line number is our line number. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set up a check range. So the range that we want to check in. And we're going to set that to worksheet dot, and we'll go ahead and do the columns. And this is column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so what we've done there is we've set that column here to the range that we're going to be searching for with our find. And then we'll go ahead and set PO find, because that's what we ended up calling that variable. So we'll say set PO find equals check range dot find. And then what are we searching for in there? We are searching for our PO. And then that reminds me, something else that we're going to want to do is set another variable up here, and it'll be first cell. And that is a range, I believe. And so what we're going to do there is we're going to say first cell equals PO find dot address. And then we're going to start our loop. So it'll be a do loop. And we'll go ahead and indent that and say if PO find dot value equals, and then we went ahead and set that PO. If it equals PO, then what we're going to want to have happen is we want to check that line number as well. So we've said we found the PO number, but does that line number match as well? And so what we can do with this is we can say, let's go ahead and introduce a new little thing here. We'll say goto found. We'll go ahead and set up that found down here, and it'll be inside of our loop still. And we'll go ahead and make that later. Because if it's found, then what we really want it to do is go ahead and increment our loop number. But just continue on, because what we're doing is we're setting up this list. We want to only add the items that aren't in this list over here. So if we say we found 100 over here, and we say we found the line number as well, well then we don't want to add this row to over here because it's already here. So just go ahead and loop on, go to the next PO number, if that makes sense. So we'll say if PO find equals PO, then go to found. But we don't quite want to do that yet. We want to say if PO find dot value equals PO and PO find dot offset, and I believe it's 0, 1. We want to offset to that next column dot value equals, and I think that is line number. Yep, equals line number. Whoops. Let's type well here. Then we're going to go into that go to found. So there we go. And then what we're going to say is else, and we'll go ahead and go to our next line and say else set PO find equals check range dot find next, and we're going to find the next PO find. And then we'll end that if, and that needs a space. Okay. So then what we want to do is we want to loop while, let's see here, let's loop while not first cell equals PO find dot address. And that should set that up for us pretty well. So what we've done here is we've created a loop that checks to see if this PO number that we're looking at, in this case we'll say number 100, if number 100 is in this list. If it is, then it jumps down to found. If it's not, then it'll go to the next, or I guess if first what it'll do is if it finds the PO address, but then says that this and this don't match the line number and the PO, the two variables that we found, then it'll find the next instance of 100. If there isn't another instance of 100, then it'll say, well, we looped until the first cell equaled the PO find dot address, so now we'll go and loop. So now we'll jump out of this loop down to, in this case, what would be found. Now, in reality, we don't want it to jump to found yet because it didn't actually find the item. So what we can do is we can set up another section here, and we'll actually call it not found. And if that item is not found, then what we want to have happen is we want to add that row to our little list here. So what we'll go ahead and do is say, I guess what we would want to have happen is we would want to copy whatever is over here, and we would want to move it to here. What we would do is we would say worksheet.range, and then we'll go ahead and say worksheet.cells. And the reason I always add that extra sheet name in here is, say for instance, you're in a different sheet and you're trying to pull from this list. This ensures that you don't have to activate the sheet each time. It knows exactly what cells you're talking about. And so in this case, we would be on I row, and we would be copying the first column, and then we would go ahead and say worksheet.cells, and we would say I row again, but now we're copying over to that second column. And we'll go ahead and close that range, and we'll say .copy. And now what we're going to want to have happen is we need to know what this last row is over here. So in this case, we will need to go ahead and say, we'll probably want to set up an L row variable. And we will want to go ahead and set L row, and you'll probably want to do it a little more dynamically once again, but in this case our L row is number 8. And so we'll copy this over to worksheet.cells, and the row is going to be L row plus 1, and the column is going to be, once again, number 8. And so now we've pasted that into that cell location. Now, we need to keep in mind that if it needs to copy multiple items, then that L row is going to change. So since we just pasted that, we'll say L row equals L row plus 1. So now L row has incremented, and we should be able to move on out of there. So now something that we forgot to take into account here is, well, what happens if we grab one of these PO numbers? Let's see, are we missing one there? We have 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105. So let's say, for instance, we have a 106 here. What would happen if we grab that 106 and we go to find it over here and it's not there? Well, what would happen is it would throw an error right here. It would try to find it and it would say, well, that doesn't exist. So what we need to do is set up an error handler. So we want to say on error go to not found, because we would want that item to be added. So let's go ahead and say on error go to 0, because after that we don't want to have that same error handler. So now it would jump down to not found, and we would be able to add that item, and it would increment our L row and everything. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Something that we'll also want to have happen there is this. And let's actually have that. Yeah. We'll say go to 0. So what this does, on error goes to -1, it resets your error handler. So that means that as you go back in, oftentimes what will happen is you'll have that first error and it kind of just trips your error handler, and so you need to reset it so that next time when it gets back to this on error go to not found, it's able to treat it correctly again. It's just kind of one of the little tricks that you have to do when you're using error handlers. So let's go ahead and take a look. We added 11 here, so we're gonna change this to 11, and let's see what happens here if we start stepping through the code. So if we take a look, our PO is 100, our line number is 101. We've set that check range to column 8, and now we're getting into our error handler, and so we'll say set that PO find. So what? PO. So if we take a look at what that is, okay, PO find is now 100. And if we say, okay, so it looks like we threw an error there, and let's take a look at why. It looks like the reason for that error there is because we set first cell as a range. We don't actually want it to be a range, we want it to be a string. Whoops. So we'll reset, that's what we want, and let's give this a shot again. So it worked that time. So now we're saying if POFind.value 100 and POFind.offset 1, which is 1, equal our PO and our line, then it should go to found, and it does. And we increment. Now we go again. So if we look at everything that should end up getting added here, it looks like we have a, let's see, a 102 1 that should end up getting added. And then, you know what, let's just run through it really quickly and see what it does. So we got that 102, we got that 105.2, and we got that 106.1. That all ended up getting added to our list. So let's go ahead and expand this a little bit so you can get a better look at that code that ended up doing what we wanted it to do. So we've created just a little mini project that is good for double checking items. Basically what it's doing is it's using Control F. It's looking up that item in that list and then seeing if it's there, and then we add that little extra step of offsetting and looking at the item next to it as well, just so that you're not checking if that one item is there, but you're actually checking if that item and another item that pertains to it is there as well. So I hope this was helpful. If you like to, go ahead, like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys next time.